U.S.-China diplomacy might never have been possible without several presidents of both the United States and China. I recently had the chance to speak with Zbigniew Brzezinski, National Security Advisor to President Jimmy Carter. The full interview airs this weekend on The Heat, but here's a sneak peek.
Dr. Brzezinski, when you work in the White House, you know that you're going to make history, but on this historic event, 35 years ago, any idea at that time how this relationship would blossom and in all the different directions it would go in?
We certainly had high expectations, but at the same time, they were defined by the geopolitical context in which we were operating. We were still engaged in a very serious competition with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a serious threat to us. That, to some extent, defined the framework for the relationship. But what was important at that instance was that the normalization of relations with China and the intensifying and increasingly cordial dialogue with the Chinese leaders made possible rather significant cooperation with China against the Soviet threat as jointly perceived.
President Nixon made his trip there, but it seemed like the negotiations took a while before 1979. Can you take us back in time? What were some of the difficulties? How did you thread the needle? What was it like?
Well, first of all, one has to give credit to President Nixon's and Henry Kissinger's initiative. They broke the ice. They did. But they confronted a residue of suspicion, and that suspicion was mutual, and grievances. And they were also mutual, that it really took time for the relationship to sort of become more normal, more predictable, and eventually what we accomplished was that it became, in fact, open and full, comprehensive, and in fact initiated a kind of secret collaboration, or even perhaps you could call it an alliance. So it took time. But what I think convinced the Chinese that it was in their interest to have that relationship with us was a combination of two factors. Deng Xiaoping realized that China was beginning to stagnate economically. And he had the good sense to realize that a breakthrough in the relationship with the United States would make it possible to unleash the productive forces of Chinese society. So he had an incentive. And secondly, he became convinced that we were serious in opposing the Chinese, that we were not seeking a de facto status quo accommodation with the Soviets, but that we were interested in rolling them back. And I think that was a very important message that the Chinese finally internalized, and which gave them an incentive to be quite cooperative.
Don't miss the rest of my interview with Dr. Brzezinski this weekend on The Heat. It airs at 8:30 Saturday night here on the East Coast of the United States. That's 12:30 a.m. Sunday GMT and 8:30 a.m. Sunday in Beijing.